أنفسهم حتى يتبين لهم أنه الحق. أولم يكف بربك أنه على كل شيء شهيد. صدق الله العظيم.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Allah sent the Prophet Muhammad, may Allah bless him and grant him peace, as a messenger to the whole universe. Allah says in the Quran, we send thee not, but as a mercy for all creatures. And so Prophet Muhammad is the messenger of Allah to the Bedouins in the desert, just as he is the messenger of Allah to the present-day scientist in his modern laboratory. He is the messenger of Allah to all peoples of all times. Before Prophet Muhammad, each messenger was sent exclusively to his own people. Allah said, to every people, a guide has been sent. But Prophet Muhammad's message is to all of mankind. And it is for this reason that Allah has given a supporting proof to the message of Prophet Muhammad, a proof which is different from the proofs given to the messengers before him. The proofs of the preceding messengers were only seen by their contemporaries and possibly by some generations immediately following them. Then Allah would send a new messenger supported with a new miracle in order to revive the faith of his people. Because Prophet Muhammad was destined to be the last of the prophets until the day of resurrection, Allah has given him an everlasting miracle as a supporting proof. If we ask a Jew or a Christian to show us the miracles of the Prophet Moses or Jesus, they both would submit that it is not within human power to redemonstrate any of those miracles now. Moses' cane cannot be recreated, and the Prophet Jesus cannot be invoked to raise people from the dead. For us today, these miracles are nothing more than historical reports. But if a Muslim is asked about the greatest miracle of the Prophet Muhammad, he can readily show his book, the Quran, which is a miracle in our hands. It is an open book for all mankind to examine its contents. Allah said in the Quran, say, what carries the most weight in testimony? Say, Allah is a witness between me and you. The Quran has been revealed to me that I may warn you with it and whomever it reaches. The miraculous nature of the Quran lies in the knowledge which it contains. Allah said, but Allah bears witness that which he has revealed to you, he has revealed from his own knowledge. Hence, our contemporary scientists and scholars, the professors in various universities who are leaders of human thought, have the opportunity to examine the knowledge which is found in the Book of Allah. In this age, scientists have excelled in discovering the universe, but the Quran has already discussed the universe and human nature. So what was the result? We present Professor Keith L. Moore, one of the world's prominent scientists of anatomy and embryology. We ask Professor Moore to give us his scientific analysis of specific Quranic verses and prophetic traditions, ahadith, pertaining to his field of specialization. Professor Keith Moore is the author of The Developing Human, which has been translated into 8 languages: Russians, Japanese, German, Chinese, Italian, and Portuguese. When we asked Professor Moore to give us his analysis of the Quranic verses and prophetic tradition ahadith, he was amazed. He wondered how the Prophet Muhammad, 14 centuries ago, could describe the embryo and its development phase in such detail and accuracy which scientists have come to know only in the last 30 years. Very quickly, however, Professor Moore's amazement grew into admiration for this revelation and guidance. He introduced these views to intellectual and scientific circles. He even gave a lecture on the compatibility of modern embryology with the Quran and Sunnah. Introducing Professor Moore, here is Dr. Abdullah Nassif, ex-director of the King Abdulaziz University.
Our guest today is Dr. Keith Moore, Professor of Anatomy and Embryology at the University of Toronto, Canada. And before, at the University of Winnipeg in Western Canada for 11 years. Then, the head of the anatomy department for 6 years. He has headed many international associations, such as Canadian and American Associations of Anatomists and the Council of the Union of Biological Sciences.
التشريح والأجنة وعلم وظائف الأعضاء والكيمياء الحيوية والعلوم الحيوية الأخرى. كما انتخب عضوا في الجمعية الطبية الملكية.
Professor Moore was also elected to the membership of the Royal Medical Association of Canada, the International Academy of Cytology, the Union of the American Anatomists, and the Union of North and South American Anatomists. Professor Moore has published many books on clinical anatomy and embryology. 8 of them are used as reference works in medical schools and have been translated into 6 languages, namely Italian, German, Portuguese, Spanish, Greek, and Chinese.
It has been a great pleasure for me to help clarify statements in the Quran about human development. It is clear to me that these statements must have come to Muhammad from God or Allah, because almost all of this knowledge was not discovered until many centuries later. This proves to me that Muhammad must have been a messenger of God or Allah.
Consider what this well-known and respected scientist of embryology declared upon studying the Quranic verses related to his discipline and his conclusion that Muhammad, may Allah bless him and grant him peace, must have been a messenger from Allah.
This proves to me that Muhammad must have been a messenger of God or Allah.
In comparing the freshwater leech to the embryo at the alaqa stage, he found a great similarity between the two. Professor Moore concluded that the embryo during the alaka stage acquires an appearance very similar to that of a leech. Professor Moore worked on this phenomena. He placed on picture of a leech together and side by side with a picture of an embryo and in an illustrative form. As we see, he presented the two pictures to scientists at several conferences, as we see in the picture. We can also see here the attachment of the embryo during the alaka stage to the uterus, the womb of the mother. The word alaka also means a clot of blood. It is significant to note, as Professor Moore stated, that during the alaka stage, the embryo blood resembles the formation of blood in closed vessels until the metabolic cycle is completed between the embryo and the placenta. During the alaka stage, the blood is then caught within closed vessels, and that is why the embryo acquires the appearance of a blood clot. Hence, in the alaka stage, the embryo acquires its human features. So how could Muhammad have possibly known that by himself? Professor Moore also studied the mudra, or chewed-like substance. He took a piece of raw clay and chewed it in his mouth, as you can see in picture B. He took a picture of the embryo at the mudra stage, as we can see in picture A. In comparing the two, Professor Moore concluded that the embryo at the mudra stage acquires the exact appearance of a chewed-like substance. Several Canadian periodicals published many of Professor Moore's statements. In addition, he presented 3 television programs in which he highlighted the compatibility of modern science with what has been contained in the Quran 1400 years ago. Consequently, Professor Moore was asked the question, does this mean that you believe that the Quran is the word of Allah? To which he replied, I find no difficulty in accepting this. He was asked, how can you believe in Muhammad while you believe in Jesus Christ? His reply was, I believe they both come from the same school. And thus, modern scientists all over the world today can come to know that the Quran has been revealed from Allah's knowledge. As Allah has told us, Allah bears witness that which He has revealed to you, He has revealed from His own knowledge. It also follows that Prophet Muhammad, may Allah bless him and grant him peace, is the messenger of Allah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. ويرى الذين أوتوا العلم الذي أنزل إليك من ربك هو الحق ويهدي إلى صراط العزيز الحميد صدق الله العظيم.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Praise be to the Lord of the universe, and may Allah bless and grant peace to the Prophet Muhammad and his family and his companions. This book, The Developing Human, written by Professor Keith Moore, has been translated into 8 languages. It is considered a scientific reference work and was chosen by a special committee in the United States as the best book, authored by one person. We met with the author of this book and presented to him many Quranic verses and prophetic ahadith which deal with his specialization in embryology. Professor Moore was convinced by our evidence, so we asked him, you mentioned in your book that in the Middle Ages there was no advancement in the science of embryology and that only very little was known at that time. At the same time, the Quran was being revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, and he was guiding people according to what Allah revealed to him. There is found in the Quran very detailed description of the creation of man and of the different stages of human development. You are a world-renowned scientist. So why do you not uphold justice and mention these truths in your book? He replied, you have the evidence and not I. So why do you not present it to us? He provided him with the facts. He proved to be a great scholar. In the third edition of his book, he did make some additions. This edition enjoys worldwide distribution and is read by many of the world's foremost scientists who speak English, Russian, Chinese, Japanese, German, Italian, Portuguese, and Yugoslavian. They read the editions of Professor Moore in his book about the Middle Ages that growth of science was slow during the medieval period, and a few high points of embryological investigation undertaken during this age are known to us. It is cited in the Quran, the holy book of the Muslim, that human beings are produced from a mixture of secretions from the male and the female. Several references are made to the creation of a human being from a sperm drop, and it is also suggested that the resulting organism settles in the woman like a seed 6 days after its beginning. The human blastocyst begins to implant about 6 days after fertilization. The Quran also states that the sperm drop develops into a clot of congealed blood. Reference is also made to the leech-like appearance of the embryo. The embryo shown in figure 5.3a is not unlike a leech or bloodsucker in appearance. The embryo is also said to resemble a chewed piece of substance. The developing embryo was considered to become human at 40 to 42 days and to no longer resemble an animal embryo at this stage. The human embryo begins to acquire human characteristics at this stage as shown in figure 5.14c. The Quran also states that the embryo develops within 3 veils of darkness. This probably refers to 1, the maternal anterior abdominal wall, 2, the uterine wall, and 3, the amniochorionic membranes. Space does not permit discussion of several other interesting references to human prenatal development that appear in the Quran. This is what Dr. Moore has written in his book, and which is now being distributed throughout the world. Scientific knowledge has made it incumbent upon Professor Moore to mention this in his book. He has concluded that the modern classification of embryonic development stages, which is adopted throughout the world, is not easy or comprehensible. It does not contribute to the understanding of the embryonic stages development because those stages are identified on a numerical basis. That is stage 1, stage 2, 3, 4, 5. The divisions that have been revealed in the Quran do not depend on a numerical system. Rather, they are based on the distinct forms. The Quran identifies the stages as follows. نطفة, a drop, علقة, a leech, مضغة, a tube-like structure, عظام, bones, كسل العظام باللحم, clothing the bones with flesh, and al-nash'a, the formation of a distinct fetus. Professor Moore has recognized that these Quranic divisions are actually based on the different phases of prenatal development. He has noted that these divisions provide scientific descriptions which are comprehensible and practical. In one of the conferences he attended, Professor Moore stated,
"The embryo develops in the mother's womb or uterus, protected by 3 veils or layers, as shown in this next slide. A represents the anterior abdominal wall. B, the uterine wall. And C, the amniochorionic membrane. Because the staging of human embryos is complex, owing to the continuous process of change during development, it is proposed that a new system of classification could be developed using the terms mentioned in the Quran and Sunnah. The proposed system is simple, comprehensive, and conforms with present embryological knowledge." Intensive studies of the Quran and Hadith in the last 4 years have revealed a system for classifying human embryos that is amazing since it was recorded in the 7th century AD. Although Aristotle, the founder of the science of embryology, realized that chick embryos developed in stages from his studies of hen's eggs in the 4th century BC, he did not give any details about these stages. As far as it is known from the history of embryology, little was known about the staging and classification of human embryos until the 20th century. For this reason, the descriptions of the human embryo in the Quran cannot be based on scientific knowledge in the 7th century. The only reasonable conclusion is that these descriptions were revealed to Muhammad from God. He could not have known such details because he was an illiterate man with absolutely no scientific training.
We told Dr. Moore, what you have said is true, but it is far less than the truth and evidence we have presented to you from the Quran and the Sunnah, and which are related to the science of embryology. So why not do justice and completely bring to light all the Quranic verses and hadith which deal with your field of specialization? He said that he has inserted the appropriate references at the appropriate places in a specialized scientific book. However, he would invite us to make some Islamic additions citing all the relevant Quranic verses and the prophetic ahadith and highlighting the various miraculous aspects to be incorporated at appropriate places in the book. This was done. And consequently, Professor Moore wrote an introduction to these Islamic additions, and the result was this book, which Dr. Moore had suggested, including the Islamic additions as you see here before you. On each page, which includes
facts about the science of embryology, we have cited the Quranic verses and prophetic ahadith which prove the inimitability of the Quran and Sunnah. What we are witnessing today is Islam, moving to new grounds within the fair and unbiased human minds.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ويرى الذين أوتوا العلم الذي أنزل إليك من ربك هو الحق ويهدي إلى صراط العزيز الحميد. صدق الله العظيم.
I think this is the time to say La ilaha illallah. There is no God to worship except Allah. Muhammad, Rasul, Lula. Muhammad is messenger of Allah.
This man is uttering the Islamic creed, Shahada, and declaring that he is becoming a Muslim. This occurred during the 8th Saudi Medical Conference, which was convened in Riyadh. He is Professor Tagata Son, formerly head of the Department of Anatomy and Embryology at the University of Chiang Mai in Thailand, and he is now the Dean of the College of Medicine at that university. Our acquaintance started when we presented to him some Quranic verses and prophetic ahadith which deal with his specialization in the field of anatomy. He commented that they also had in their Buddhist books very accurate descriptions of embryonic development stages. We told him that we were very anxious and interested to see those descriptions and learn about these books. He promised to give further details. And when he came back to King Abdulaziz University to examine students of medicine as outside examiner, we reminded him of the statement he made 1 year before. But he apologized and said that he, in fact, had made that statement without ascertaining the matter. However, when he checked the Buddhist books, he found that they contained nothing of relevance to the subject. Upon this, we presented to him a lecture written by Professor Keith Moore about the compatibility of modern embryology with what is contained in the Quran and the Sunnah, and we asked him if he knew of Professor Keith Moore. He replied that he knew him, of course, adding that Professor Moore was one of the most world-renowned scientists in that field. After studying this article, he was astonished. We asked him a question about the modern discoveries in dermatology.
Yes, if the burn is deep and this destroy the receptor, we will know the perception for sensation.
You will be interested to know that in this book, the holy book, the Quran, there was a reference 1400 years ago which refers to the moment of punishment of the unbelievers by the fire of hell, and it states that when the skin is destroyed, Allah makes another skin for them so that they perceive the punishment by fire, indicating knowledge about the about the nerve endings in the skin. And the verse is إن الذين كفروا بآياتنا سوف نصليهم نارا كلما نضجت جلودهم بدلناهم جلودا غيرها ليذوقوا العذاب إن الله كان عزيزا حكيما. The translation of the meaning of this verse: those who reject our science we shall soon cast into the fire. As often as their skins are roasted through, we shall change them for fresh skins, that they may taste the penalty. For God is exalted in power and wise. So, do you agree that this is a reference to the importance of the nerve endings in the skin in sensation 1400 years ago?
ครับผมเห็นด้วยว่าฉลาดมากที่รู้ว่าเมื่อคนถูกทำโทษแล้วเอาไฟเผาแล้วเนี่ยความรู้สึกของคนคนนั้นจะหายไปจึงได้เสกให้มีผิวหนังเกิดขึ้นใหม่ทำให้คนนั้นรู้สึกว่าไอ้ที่เราทำผิดเนี่ยมันเจ็บปวดแค่ไหน Yes, I agree. This knowledge about sensation had known long before, because it states that if something do something wrong, and then is what punished by burning his skin, and then the Allah put the fresh skin cover him to make him know the taste or the painful again. That means that they know 100 years ago that the receptor of pain sensation must be in the skin. So they must put a new skin on it.
The skin is the center of sensitivity to burns. Thus, if the skin is completely burned by fire, it loses its sensitivity. It is for this reason that Allah will punish the unbelievers by returning to them their skins, time after time, as Allah said in the Quran. Those who reject our signs, we shall cast into the fire. As often as their skin are roasted through, we shall change them for fresh skins, that they may taste penalty. And we read to him some verses of Quran, and we asked him the following question. Is it possible that these verses came to the Prophet Muhammad from a human source? Tagason conceded that they could have never come from any human source. But he still asked about the source of that knowledge. His question was, from where could Muhammad have possibly received it? We said, from Allah, the most glorified and most exalted. Then he asked, but who is Allah? We replied, he is the creator of all that is in existence. If you find wisdom, it is because it comes only from the one who is most wise. If you find knowledge, it is because it comes from the one who knows everything. If you find perfection, then it's proof that it comes from the one who is most perfect. And if you find mercy, it is because it comes from the one who is most merciful. In the same way, if you perceive creation, then this is proof that it is the creation of the only creator. Professor Tagason agreed with what we said and returned to his country, where he delivers several lectures about his new knowledge and discoveries. We were informed that 5 of his students converted to Islam as a result of these lectures. Then, at the 8th Saudi Medical Conference held in Riyadh, Professor Tagason attended a series of lectures on medical science in the Quran and Sunnah. He spent 4 days with several scholars talking about this phenomenon, and at the end of the sessions he said,
During the last
end of those sessions,
I became interested in the Quran, which Sheikh Abdul Majid al-Sindani gave me. Last year, I got Professor Keith Moore's lecture script from Sheikh. He asked me to translate it into the Thai language and to give a few lectures to the Muslims in Thailand. I have fulfilled his request, and you could see this in the video tape that I have given to Qing as a gift. From my study and what I have learned from this conference, I believe that everything that has been recorded in the Quran 1400 years ago must be true. That can be proved by the scientific means. Since the Prophet Muhammad could neither read nor write, Muhammad must be a messenger who relayed this truth, which was revealed to him as an enlightenment by the one who is knowledgeable Creator. This Creator must be God or Allah. Therefore, I think this is the time to say, La ilaha illallah. There is no God to worship except Allah. Muhammad, Rasul, Lula. Muhammad is messenger of Allah. Lastly, I must congratulate for the excellent and highly successful arrangement for this conference. The writings, the preparation for the meeting of this size must be very complicated and hard work. I have gained much not only from the scientific point of view and religious point of view, but also the great chance of meeting many well-known scientists and making many new friends among the participants. The most precious things of all that I have gained by coming to this place is La ilaha illallah. Muhammad, Rasul, Lula, and to have become Muslim. Thank you.
The truth comes from Allah, who said, "Praise be to God, who will soon show you his signs, so that ye shall know them."
الرحمن الرحيم ويرى الذين أوتوا العلم الذي أنزل إليك من ربك هو الحق ويهدي إلى صراط العزيز الحميد صدق الله العظيم.
And that many of the statements made in there at that time could not be proven, but that modern scientific methods are now in a position to prove what Muhammad said 1400 years ago.
We present to you Professor Alfred Kroner, who is one of the world's most famous geologists. He became well known among his colleague scientists for his criticism against the theories of some of the major scientists in his field. We met with him and presented to him several Quranic verses and a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad. May Allah bless him and grant him peace. He studied them, commented on them, and then we had a discussion with him.
Thinking of many of these questions and thinking where Muhammad came from, he was after all a Bedouin. I think it is almost impossible that he could have known about things like the common origin of the universe, because scientists have only found out within the last few years with very complicated and advanced technological methods that this is the case.
Professor Kroner chose an example from the Quran which proved to him why the Quran could not have come from Muhammad himself. The example which Professor Kroner chose is a description in Quran of the fact that this universe had its beginnings. In one single entity, Allah said, "Do not the unbelievers see that the heavens and the earth were joined together? Before we clave them asunder, we made from water every living thing." The meaning of Ratkan in Arabic, as Ibn Abbas, Mujahid, and others said, is that the heavens and the earth were stuck together or blended together, and that they were later separated from each other. Professor Kroner used this as an example to prove that no human being during the time of Prophet Muhammad, may Allah bless him and grant him peace, could have known this by himself.
Somebody who did not know something about nuclear physics 1400 years ago could not, I think, be in a position to find out from his own mind, for instance, that the earth and the heavens had the same origin, or many other of the questions that we have discussed here.
Professor Kroner, so it seemed to us, has a special talent of being evasive. For example, when we were in discussion, we asked him to describe the geological conditions of Arabia. We specifically asked him, was Arabia full of orchards and rivers? He replied, yes. We asked, when was this? He said, during the Snow Age. And it is further known that the North Polar icebergs are slowly moving southwards. When those polar icebergs become relatively close to the Arabian Peninsula, the weather will change, and Arabia will become one of the greenest and wettest parts of the world. We asked him, will Arabia become the land of orchards and rivers? He said, yes, it is a scientific fact. This astonished us, and we wondered how he could state this as a scientific fact, while it was related to the future. And we asked why. He said, because the new snow age has actually started, and we can see the snow crawling once again from the North Pole southwards. In fact, the polar snow is now on the way to get closer to the Arabian Peninsula, and he added, we can see the signs of this in the snow blizzards striking the northern parts of Europe and America every winter. Scientists have other signs and information proving the actual beginning of another snow age. It is a scientific fact. So we said to him, what you have just mentioned has only been known to scientists after a long series of discoveries and with the help of specialized instruments which help to support their research. But we have already found this mentioned by Prophet Muhammad 14 centuries ago. He said, the last hour will not come upon us until the lands of the Arabs are once again pasture lands and filled with rivers. At this point, we asked Professor Kroner, who told the Prophet Muhammad that the lands of the Arabs were once filled with orchards and rivers? He immediately replied, the Romans. This reminded me of Professor Kroner's evasive ability. We asked him another question. We said to him, but who informed the Prophet Muhammad that the lands of the Arabs would once again become pasture lands and rivers? Professor Kroner becomes evasive if embarrassed, but if he faces truth, he is brave enough to state his opinion frankly. He replied, this could have been known only through revelation from above. Finally, after our discussions with him, he made the following comments, and these are his words.
If you combine all these, and you combine all these statements that are being made in the Quran, in terms that relate to the earth and the formation of the earth and science in general, you can basically say that the statements made there in many ways are true. They can now be confirmed by scientific methods, and in a way you can say that the Quran is a simple science textbook for the simple man, and that many of the statements made in there at that time could not be proven, but that modern scientific methods are now in a position to prove what Muhammad said 1400 years ago.
Allah confirms in his book that This is no less than a message to the worlds, and ye shall certainly know the truth of it after a while.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ويرى الذين أوتوا العلم الذي أنزل إليك من ربك هو الحق ويهدي إلى صراط العزيز الحميد. صدق الله العظيم.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Praise be to Allah, the Lord of the universe, and may Allah bless and grant peace to our Prophet Muhammad, to his family, and to his companions. We present to you Professor Marshall Johnson, who is the head of the Department of Anatomy and the director of the Daniel Institute at Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia in the United States of America. We first met with Professor Johnson at the 7th Saudi Medical Conference, where a special committee was formed to investigate scientific science in the Quran and the Sunnah. When we met together with the committee, he started with a question what our committee was doing. We told him that the subject of our study was the relationship between what the Quran and Sunnah have contained 14 centuries ago and what modern scientists tells us. He asked, like what? We said, for example, modern science tells us that the human prenatal development goes through several stages, whereas the Quran mentioned these stages to us 14 centuries ago. Professor Johnson stood up. He said, no, no, no. We understood the effect of such statements upon him. We knew he was one of the foremost scientists in the United States. He knew, of course, that after the discovery of the microscope in the 16th century, physicians throughout the 17th century believed that a human being's origin began entirely in the male's semen, specifically in the male's sperm, the fertilizing fluid of male, as can be seen here. This picture was the evidence used by scientists in the 17th century to support their belief that the human being was created wholly from the male sperm. But after the discovery of the ovum in the 18th century, all the scientists changed their minds and began to believe that a human being's origin began entirely in the female ovum because the ovum was larger than the sperm of the male. It was not until the middle of the 19th century when scientists began to discover that the human embryo development took place in several successive stages. It was for this reason when Professor Johnson was told that this information has been in the Quran that he stood and shouted, no, no, no. So we in turn handed him a copy of the Quran and showed him the following verse which he read in the English translation. What is the matter with you, that ye place not your hope for kindness and long-suffering in God, seeing that it is he that has created you in diverse stages, and he makes you in the wombs of your mothers in stages, one after another, in 3 layers of darkness. At this, he sat down and said, but this could be explained in 3 possibilities. The first is that it can be a mere coincidence. So we collected more than 25 texts and presented them to him. Then we asked him, is it possible that these texts are coincidences? Moreover, the glorious Quran has given each of these stages a name, the first being the nutfa, the second being the alaqa, the third being the mudra, the fourth being bones, and then the clothing of the bones with flesh. Can all of this be a coincidence? He flatly said no. We said, then what remains? He said the other possibility is that Muhammad had hold of powerful microscopes. We said, you know that this sort of minute and specialized knowledge, which has now become known to scientists and which has been contained in the Quran, can only be obtained by very powerful microscopes. And anyone possessing such powerful microscopes must also possess very high technology, which must be reflected in his daily living, his house, his food, his war and peace, etc. And you know that technological advancement is a process of cumulative inheritance passed on and improved upon from one generation to the other. He laughed and said, in fact, I saw the first microscope invented in the world. It does not magnify more than 10 times and does not even show a clear picture. Prophet Muhammad never had possession of scientific equipment. The only thing that remains for us to say is that he was a messenger from Allah. After this, Professor Johnson began to take interest in the study of scientific science in the Quran and concentrated his presentation on the internal as well as external development of the fetus.
Summary: the Quran describes not only the development of external form, but emphasizes also the internal stages, the stages inside the embryo of its creation and development, emphasizing major events recognized by contemporary science. Thank you for your attention.
For example, this photo of the mudra, or the tube-like structure, is one of the things that Professor Johnson used as evidence. This picture of the mudra shows the external appearance of the embryo with its curved structure and with visible protuberances and grooves resembling teeth marks. We notice the swallows and the grooves. We also notice the curved surface, and all of which give the embryo its distinctive features, while the embryo is only 1 centimeter in length. If we dissect the internal organs, we would find that most of them are already formed, as is apparent here. You can also see from this picture that some of the cells have already formed, while others are not yet completely formed. How then would we describe this embryo? Professor Johnson asks, how would we describe this embryo? What do we say? Could we say it is a complete creation? Then we are describing the part which is already created. And if we say it is an incomplete creation, then we are describing the part which is not yet created. Then the question would be, is it a complete creation or is it an incomplete creation? There is no better description of that stage of embryogenesis than the Quranic description, which says a mudra partly formed and partly unformed. Here is Professor Johnson.
As a scientist, I can only deal with things which I can specifically see. I can understand embryology and developmental biology. I can understand the words that are translated to me from the Quran. As I gave the example before, if I were to transpose myself into that era, knowing what I do today and describing things, I could not describe the things which were described. I see no reason, I see no evidence for the fact to refute the concept that this individual, Muhammad, had to be developing this information from someplace. So I see nothing here in conflict with the concept that divine intervention was involved in what he was able to write. Intervention was involved in what he was able to write.
Yes. Yes. It is the revelation. The only way left to mankind is to follow the example of those great scientists, acknowledging that Allah has revealed to Muhammad a book from Allah's knowledge. Allah has further promised that mankind will, over the time,
come to discover the signs which prove that the Quran is truly a book revealed by Allah. Allah said in the Quran, and you will come to know its truth with time. And said, for every announcement there is an appointed time which you will come to know of. And said, we shall show them our signs on the horizons and within themselves until it becomes clear to them that is the truth. Is it not sufficient that your Lord is a witness of everything?
الرحمن الرحيم ويرى الذين أوتوا العلم الذي أنزل إليك من ربك هو الحق ويهدي إلى صراط العزيز الحميد صدق الله العظيم.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This man is speaking to you in his native Japanese language. He is Professor Yoshido Kusan, director of the Tokyo Observatory. We presented to him a number of Quranic verses describing the beginning of creation and the heavens, and which deal with the relationship of the earth to heavens. After studying these verses, Professor Yoshido asked us about the Quran and about the time when the Quran was revealed. We informed him that it was revealed 14 centuries ago. And then we asked him about the facts which these verses contained. After each answer, we would show him the Quranic text. He expressed his astonishment, saying that this Quran describes the universe as seen from the highest point. Everything seen is distinct and clear. He who said this sees everything in existence, seen from such point. There is nothing which can be unseen. We asked him whether at some point in time the firmament was in a form of smoke. He stated that all signs and indications are converging to prove that at one point of time the whole firmament was nothing but a cloud of smoke. It is a proven visible fact. Scientists now can observe new stars forming up out of that smoke, which is the origin of our universe as we see in this picture. This picture was obtained only recently with the help of spaceships. It shows one of the stars as it forms up out of the smoke. Look at the outer reddish parts of the smoke as it begins to heat and cluster, and look at the center of the cloud and how the smoky matter becomes irradiant. The illuminating stars we see today were just as was the whole universe in that smoke form. We presented to him the Quranic verses saying, moreover, he comprehended in his design the sky, and it had been smoke. He said to it and to the earth, come ye together, willingly or unwillingly. They said, we do come in willing obedience. Some scientists describe this dukhan or smoke as mist, but Professor Yoshido pointed out that the term mist does not correspond to the description of this smoke because mist is cold, whereas this cosmic smoke is somewhat hot. Dukhan indeed is made up of diffused gases to which solid substances are attached, and this is the exact description of the smoke from which the universe emerged even before the stars were formed. Professor Yoshido said that because that smoke was hot, we cannot describe it as mist. Dukhan is the best descriptive word that can ever be.
In this way, Professor Cousin continued to scrutinize each Quranic verse we presented to him. Finally, we asked him, what do you think of this phenomenon, which you have seen for yourself, namely that science is beginning to discover the secrets of the universe, whereas many of these secrets were revealed in the Quran. Do you think that the Quran was given to Prophet Muhammad from a human source?
Actually, I'm very much impressed by finding true astronomical facts in Quran. And for us, we modern astronomers have been studying very small field of the universe. We concentrated our efforts for understanding of very small part, because by using telescope, we can see only a very few parts of the sky without thinking whole the universe. So by reading Quran and by answering to your questions, I think I can find my future way for investigation of the universe.
He believes, as we have heard, that it is impossible that the Quran was from a human source. He further stated that we scientists in our studies concentrate only on a small area, but if we read the Quran, then we will see a much larger picture of this universe. Scientists have to look at it in a panorama, not within limited and narrow perspective. Professor Cousin acknowledges that after reading the Quran, especially the verses relating to the cosmos, he is now able to define his way in the future. He states that from now on, he will plan his research guided by the omnibus Quranic view of the universe. Glory to you, O Lord. May you be exalted. Here are the renowned scientists of the East and the West, bowing their heads to the glory of this book, which is the proof given to Prophet Muhammad. This is the everlasting miracle which renews itself. This is a miracle which gives life and which convinces Muslims and non-Muslims, and which will convince all generations until the day of judgment. But Allah witnesses that which He has revealed to you, He has revealed it from His knowledge.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ويرى الذين أوتوا العلم الذي أنزل إليك من ربك هو الحق ويهدي إلى صراط العزيز الحميد صدق الله العظيم.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Praise be to Allah, the Lord of the universe, and may Allah bless and grant peace to our Prophet Muhammad and to his family and to his companions. Western thought today is in the midst of a raging battle between religion and science. It is also impossible for a Western thinker today to accept the fact that there may be a meeting ground between religion and science. The Bible, in which the Christians believe, states that the tree from which Adam was forbidden to eat was the tree of knowledge. Thus, after he ate from it, he gained certain knowledge that he had not had before. For this reason, Europe spent 2 centuries arguing whether or not to accept scientific knowledge coming from the Muslims. The Church ruled that the pursuit of such scientific knowledge was the cause for the original sin. The bishops drew their evidence from the Old Testament, where it is mentioned that when Adam ate of the tree and gained some knowledge, Allah was displeased with him and denied him mercy. Scientific knowledge was therefore rejected entirely by the church as a taboo. Finally, when the free thinkers and scientists of the West were able to overcome the power of the church, they took revenge by going in the opposite direction and suppressing any power of the religion. They went to all possible extremes in order to overcome the power of the church and reduce its influence into a narrow and a confined corner. Therefore, if you discuss religion and science with a Westerner, he readily goes into sheer wonderment. They do not know that Islam accords a very high status to knowledge, and men of knowledge regarding them as witnesses after angels, as Allah said. There is no God but He that is the witness of God, His angels, and those endued with knowledge. It is known from the Quran that Adam was favored over the angels by virtue of the knowledge given to him by Allah. The Quranic story contradicts that of the Bible, which Muslims hold to have been distorted. According to the Quran, the fact that Adam was given knowledge is a mark of honor and not the cause of his expulsion from paradise. Hence, if one discusses Islam and science with Western thinkers, they tend to expect an argument similar to what they have in their own religious and cultural context. That's why they react with surprise when they are presented with the crystal clear facts of the Quran and Sunnah. Among those who were taken by surprise is Professor Joe Lee Simpson, professor of obstetrics and gynecology at the Northwestern in Chicago in the United States of America. When we first met with him, Professor Simpson insisted on verifying the Quran and the Sunnah texts we presented to him. He wanted to ascertain that those texts were actually from the Quran. We were able, however, to remove his suspicion. We presented to him the texts outlining the development of the embryo. We proved to him that the Quran informs us that heredity and the chromosomal makeup of the new being take place only after the successful union between the sperm and the ovum. As we know, these chromosomes contain all the characteristics which the new human being will have, such as the color of the eyes, skin, hair, etc. Hence, many of the details in the human being's makeup are determined in his chromosomes. These chromosomes begin to form during the early nutfa stage of embryonic development. Allah said, "Woe to man, what hath made him reject God? From what stuff hath he created him? From a sperm drop he hath created him." During the first 40 days of the conceptus, all the body parts and organs are completed. All the organs are formed, though consecutively, as we notice in this picture, the organs begin to be formed, assembled, and the fetus is twisted. Prophet Muhammad says, "In every one of you, all components of your creation are collected together in your mother's womb by 40 days. In another hadith, he said, "If 42 nights have passed over the conceptus, Allah sends an angel to shape it." Professor Simpson studied these two ahadith extensively, noting that the first 40 days constitute a clearly distinguishable stage of embryogenesis. He was particularly impressed by the absolute precision and accuracy of those ahadith. Then during one of the conferences, he said,
"So that the two hadiths that have been noted furnish us with a specific timetable for the main embryological development before 40 days. Again, the point has been made, I think, repeatedly by other speakers this morning. These hadiths could not have been obtained on the basis of the scientific knowledge that was available at the time of their writing.
Professor Simpson says that religion can successfully guide the pursuit of knowledge. The West, as we said, has rejected this, but here is an American scientist who says that religion, namely Islam, can achieve this with success. By analogy, if you have the operation manual of a factory, you will be able to understand the kind of operation that goes on that factory. But if you don't have it with you, chances are much less that you will understand the various processes there. To all Muslim scientists, we introduce Professor Simpson's words.
It follows, I think, that not only is there no conflict between genetics and religion, but in fact religion may guide science by adding revelation to some of the traditional scientific approaches. That there exist statements in the Quran shown centuries later to be valid would support knowledge in the Quran having been derived from God. Thank you very much.
Yes, this is true. I also say that Muslims can lead the way in the pursuit of knowledge, and that they can accord knowledge its proper status. Moreover, Muslims know how to use knowledge as proof of the existence of Allah and to affirm the messengership of Muhammad. Allah said in the Quran, "We shall show them our signs on the horizons and within themselves until it becomes clear to them that it is the truth." Is it not sufficient that your Lord is a witness of everything?
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ويرى الذين أوتوا العلم الذي أنزل إليك من ربك هو الحق ويهدي إلى صراط العزيز الحميد صدق الله العظيم.
Praise be to Allah, the Lord of the universe, and may Allah bless and grant peace to our Prophet Muhammad and to his family and to his companions. We present to you Professor Hay, with whom we went on a marine expedition to show us some of the phenomena connected to our study of the scientific miracles in the Quran and Sunnah. Professor Hay is one of the best-known marine scientists in the United States. We asked him many questions about the marine surface, the divider between the upper and lower sea, and about the ocean floor and marine geology. We also asked Professor Hay about the mixed water partitions between the different seas and oceans, and about the Australian boundaries between the seas and freshwater rivers. He was kind enough to answer all our questions in great detail. With regard to the partitions between the different seas, he explained that these bodies of water are not one homogeneous sea, as it appears to us. Rather, they are different seas distinguished by varying degrees of salinity, temperature, and density. In this slide, here the white lines represent partitions between two different seas. Each partition divides two seas that differ in temperature, salinity, density, marine biology and oxygen, dissolubility. Scientists first had this picture as you see it in 1942, after hundreds of marine research stations were set up. Here we see the divider between the Mediterranean and the Atlantic Ocean. In the middle of this photo, we see a colored triangle. This is the base of the Rock of Gibraltar. We can observe a color partition between the two bodies of water, although the naked human eye cannot perceive it in nature. This has become possibly by means of satellite photography and remote sensing techniques. This photograph here was taken by a satellite utilizing the special thermal characteristics of the various water bodies, and it is for this reason that the seas show up with different colors. For example, we here see light blue, dark blue, and black. Other bodies of water show a greenish color. The different colors represent the difference in temperatures of the sea surface. However, as we all know, these oceans and seas will simply appear as blue in color to our eyes. These are partitions which can only be seen and perceived by scientific research and modern technology. Traditionally, there have been two major interpretations of this verse. One opinion states that according to the literal meaning of the term maraja, in this verse, he that let loose the two seas which meet each other, yet between them is a barrier which they overpass not. Seas do meet and mix with each other, but the fact that the Quran goes on to state that there is a barrier between them means that this barrier will simply prevent the seas from the encroaching upon each other or flooding over each other. Proponents of the second opinion ask, how can there be a barrier between the seas so that they do not encroach upon each other, while the verse indicates that the seas meet together? They concluded that the seas do not meet and sought another meaning for the term maraja, but now modern science provides us with enough information to settle this issue. The seas do meet together, as we have seen, for example, in the picture of the Mediterranean and Atlantic Ocean. Even though there is a slanted water barrier between them, we now know that through the barrier, the water from each sea passes to the other. But when the water from one sea enters the other sea, it loses its distinctive characteristics and becomes homogenized with the other water. In a way, this barrier serves as a transitional homogenizing area for the two waters. This is an excellent example of Islamic modern scientific research. Modern techniques can thus be used to prove the inimitability of the Quran. We discussed this verse with Professor Hay, and then we asked him the following question. What is your opinion of this phenomenon, namely, that you have in your possession now texts which have been revealed 14 centuries ago and which describe in minute detail secrets of the universe unknown at that time simply because the techniques and the equipment were not available?
I find it very interesting that this sort of information is in the ancient scriptures of the Holy Quran, and I have no way of knowing where they would come from, but I think it is extremely interesting that they are there and that this work is going on to discover the meaning of some of the passages.
Then you have flatly denied to be just, from a man or human source, from who then do you think the original or the source of such information?
Well, I would think it must be the divine being.
Truly, this is divine knowledge which Allah sent in order to support the message of the Prophet Muhammad, who said, each prophet has been given something to make his people believe in him, but I have been given a revelation from Allah, and I hope that I will have the greatest number of followers on the day of judgment. This revelation contains its own miracle and stands as a proof for humanity until the last hour.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ويرى الذين أوتوا العلم الذي أنزل إليك من ربك هو الحق ويهدي إلى صراط العزيز الحميد. صدق الله العظيم.
I have no difficulty in my mind reconciling that this is a divine inspiration or revelation which led him to these statements.
We present to you Professor T.V.N. Persaud, who is the head of the Department of Anatomy at the Medical School of the University of Manitoba in Canada. Professor Keith Moore introduced him to us, and he thinks that there are free-minded scholars and scientists whose main preoccupation is searching for the truth. Professor Persaud is one of those. He is well known in his field and has authored several books on obstetrics. He also includes in these books some Quranic verses and prophetic ahadith. And he also presented these verses and ahadith at several conferences which he attended. He wrote several researches. One of them concerns a hadith of Prophet Muhammad, which says, if 42 nights have passed over the conceptus, Allah sends an angel to shape it and create its hearing, vision, skin, muscles, and bones. Then the angel asks, O Lord, male will it be or female? And Allah decides what he wills. This picture shows a fetus in the 35th day, which does not take a human form. And the following picture shows the same fetus in 42nd day. So far, Dr. Persaud says, we cannot discern a human shape. We see this illustrative picture made by Siba depicting the fetus in the 42nd day. 1 week later, during the 7th week, immediately after 42 days, the picture is completely changed as we see here. The prophetic hadith in this respect says, if 42 nights have passed over the conceptus, Allah sends an angel to shape it and create its hearing, vision, skin, muscles, and bones. Dr. Persaud presented many researches concerning the relationship between both the Quran and the Sunnah and modern science. The following is another hadith which Professor Persaud studied and made it the subject of one of his presentations. If lewdness exists among people and then appears as a common and open practice, plagues and new diseases which did not exist before will spread among them. Let us listen to Professor Persaud's explanation of this hadith.
The widely accepted that these malignant changes in the uterine cervix are related to the age of the women, frequency of intercourse, and the number of partners. Several epidemiological studies have clearly indicated a significant correlation between exposure to multiple sexual partners and a higher incidence of cervical carcinoma. The consequences and dangers of promiscuous sexual relationships and deviant sexual practices have been expressed in this hadith some 1400 years ago. Could I have the next slide, please? And I hope it is correct. The lewdness will not exist among people until they appear as a common practice, and plagues and new disease which did not exist before will spread among them. The word lewdness encompasses adultery, fornication, I'm told, homosexuality, bestiality, and all other sexual perversions. And it is not wide stretched of any imagination that we should not consider herpes and AIDS as clear examples of new diseases, and indeed at the present time new diseases for which we have no cure.
Today we can understand the significance of this hadith of Prophet Muhammad. If lewdness exists among people and then appears as a common and open practice, plagues and new diseases which did not exist before will spread among them. Because homosexuality, prostitution and lewdness have become widespread and even legalized in many Western countries. It was not many years after the sexual revolution that these diseases, which Professor Persaud spoke of, have become widespread, and some of them, such as AIDS, are constituting a serious health problem today. The words of the Prophet are very exact. AIDS is an example of the kind of disease which is now increasing at an alarming rate, and many people are afraid that they will catch it. We express our gratitude to this professor who stated,
Explained to me is that Muhammad was a very ordinary man. He couldn't have read, didn't know to write. In fact, he was illiterate. And we're talking about 1200 years ago. You have someone, a literate person, making profound pronouncements and statements that are amazingly accurate of a scientific nature. And I personally can't see how this could be a mere chance. There are too many accuracies. And like Dr. Moore, I have no difficulty in my mind reconciling that this is a divine inspiration or revelation which led him to these statements.
Yes, it is a revelation. These revelations have come to the Prophet Muhammad, may Allah bless him and grant him peace from Allah. Allah sent it from his knowledge. As Allah states, Allah witnesses that which has been revealed to you, He has revealed it from his knowledge. This book, the Quran, is the guide, the proof, and the everlasting truth until the last hour.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ويرى الذين أوتوا العلم الذي أنزل إليك من ربك هو الحق ويهدي إلى صراط العزيز الحميد. صدق الله العظيم.